Hey, friends. Today, we're just going to give you a quick update on how things are going in the dairy department at the farm here. And hopefully it will inspire you because we have made some progress. All right, Drew, tell us what has transpired since our last podcast.
So last podcast, we were still logging and we were trying to get the cow into the barn on the regular, right? And if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it. It's called, what's the title? How to Milk a Cow? Question mark. So since then, we have been able to get her to come to the barn. Essentially, what I decided was I was going to work with the halter with her. And Lacey and I kind of had this moment where we came together, and Lacey was like, look, we can't both be working on this project together at the same time. And I think that was a really good moment of realization. We were it was kind of silly for us both to be trying to pull a halter, we both wanted to do it, but Lacey said if I got her trained, then she would come milk. Which, fair enough.
I will say, I think my influence was strong, though, because my idea from the beginning was halter. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, I am with them every single day because or more because I'm moving them constantly. So I started with a halter. It was essentially just I went out there and I would feed her an alfalfa cube and then put the halter near her. And then I just kept doing this I was doing it twice a day because at that point I was moving them twice a day. So I just kept slowly. And then for a while I was just hanging the halter from her ears and then I would put it on and take it off. And it was over the process of, what do you think? 2 weeks? Mm-hmm. About 2 weeks of doing that to where then I could put the halter on her and she had no problems. And then I started doing where I would just pull her a little bit. And I mean, it was, again, like we said in the first podcast, it was just so much slower going than I'm comfortable with. But I was just this is going to be a marathon. I kind of got in the mindset of even if I don't milk her with this calf, at least she'll be trained for the next calf. And
you'll be trained because we also have another cow that could potentially birth, and then we could potentially milk her. So it's okay. You learn this process.
Figure out this process. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
She's a little bit more wild, so it'll be interesting if that.
Her favorite thing to do is moo at the top of her lungs.
Oh my gosh.
And to run and kick her back legs up in the air. So,
I'm not 100% sure she's a keeper. We've talked about this before with livestock. If it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit, and you can always move on.
I do think that she would be a great candidate for the shoe. So I'm kind of she might put her out there. I mean, that's kind of the nice thing about having that property is, if they're not a dairy candidate or a homestead dairy candidate, you put them out there and now they're a beef candidate.
Right. Well, and that's, again, I mean, the reason that we go with this dual purpose is because we want it to be, and the truth is the one we're milking, Liesel, she is not a dual purpose. She's a dairy breed.
Yeah.
I think maybe heritagely speaking, back a few hundred years, maybe she was a dual purpose breed, but that how things work. She's
not beefy.
No, she's not beefy.
She carries her body for milk.
She does.
So then we started taking the process of, and I'm still doing this, I would take her into the barn and tie her halter to the head gate and feed her in the feeder on the other side of the head gate. And that's what she does now, and we milk her successfully. So that's I remember the first morning I was just I'm just going to take her and put her in there. And then I was I'm going to see if I can squeeze a little milk out. And then I was you know what? She's letting me. And so I just kept going.
Well, I think we said in the original one, it was never a matter if she let you milk. She would always let me get down there and squeeze her out. Or she didn't care about that. She just didn't want to stand still. Right. And she definitely did not want to be in the head gate where it would be convenient to milk her. So she was always pretty willing to let us squeeze and get milk out. It was just, okay, how do we get her to stand in a place that we can do it?
Yeah. And so I started with the halter pretty loose, and then Matt was like, just keep tying the halter tighter and tighter. And like now, like today, I actually had the halter like tied about as tight as it can go. So she couldn't really step backwards. She kind of had to keep her head in the head gate, which if you haven't milked before, if they step backwards one step, it's not a big deal. If they take 2 steps backwards, now their foot's in the bucket or kicking the bucket over. So for a while, like I started out milking one-handed, one hand on the bucket and one hand on an udder, but then you're
not efficient.
No, then you're out there forever. And so, and like some people will say you have to feed them while they're milking, and then some people say absolutely don't feed them while they're milking. But I went with the approach of I was just going to give her alfalfa pellets or alfalfa cubes while I milk her. So she's super willing to now stand there as long as she has food, but when she doesn't, she's
ready to go.
She's not as excited. But I even noticed this morning, she was pretty much out, and I had to push her to go back out and actually close the head gate after she was out because she was trying to stick her head back in there, even though I was done milking. So we're getting somewhere with that. And I have 2 volunteers that keep asking me to wake them up in the morning to come help. And they just sit there and like drop 1 cube at a time into the sink.
So cute.
I had like this, it's definitely easier to just get up and walk out the door by yourself and do everything. But to me, the whole point of us homesteading and doing all of this is for the kids, for them to be learning, for them to be having those experiences alongside of us. So I've just decided like, yeah, can be a little more frustrating because like I've got the bucket of milk and Abraham's like jumping back and forth through the little hole I cut out, and like he's like standing on a board and he's getting ready to jump, and I have like the whole bucket of milk, and he's like, I'm gonna jump over there. I'm like, dude, this milk is like right here. I don't want that spilled. And then he's like twirling stuff in the air, and I'm like, I don't want that in the milk. And like, so there's like there's an extra challenging effort, but I feel like at this point the milking is starting to refine itself more. The challenging part now is figuring out a system of wherever she is, because we rotate so much, of being able to have laneways back to the barn. And it's turning out like our property is kind of set up so our driveway makes a pretty good laneway to the barn.
Well, I think 2 things that I'm picking up from the conversation, and just I think to be clear with everybody about the learning from this is not possible without community. So one of the things that's available on the internet at large, and then, Facebook world, is you've got a group that for everything, right? You got a group for how to keep a family cow. And I'm not advocating for that group. I'm actually advocating to potentially ignore that group and just find trusted friends in your community who have done what you're trying to do and will help you, pay them if necessary, trade with them, just be friends, like have a community of people who are supporting one another. And shout out to Matt, who was a major help for Drew, and also Courtney, who was willing and she was the one who put the halter idea in my mind. And, and I think everyone has a different vision for their homestead, and you're never going to be identical to anyone else. But finding real people and having real conversations with people who are doing it, and not just the internet at large, it just can be so overwhelming. You can post in, like Drew was saying, with feeding them or not feeding them, you can post in a group and they'll say, oh, if you're not feeding them while they're eating, I'm going to call, Child Protective Service. Seriously, like people are just so.
No, I know. Well, when we first started, like the whole process of like, how are we going to milk her? I posted in that one family cow group, and people just like, it was like insane. And I was like, oh, right. This is Facebook, and I should not be asking for advice in here. And like, I know people are passionate, but people in that group were ugly and not nice. And I've seen it time and time again on other people in other groups also. And it was just like, this is not helpful and it's going to stress me out. And ultimately, like you said, it's not the real world. It's not really people that are doing it. And
well, a lot of times, no, these people are just, they could not even have a cow.
They might not even have a cow.
Yeah. You never really know. And I'm sure there are a lot of great people in there that mean well. And maybe the goal is to like just whittle through and make some real true friends and community from the people that, are in there. But you can't just put your stuff out on the internet and wait for it to tell you what to do, because it'll tell you everything to do.
Right. And I mean, there's the whole context too, I don't want to use a bunch of chemicals. I don't want to feed crappy feed. I want to move them all the time. And like our homestead is like nobody else's homestead. And the way we move is completely different. So it's like, I think you have to trust yourself also. Like, last night we spent probably an hour or more setting up new laneways and all of this stuff. And then the cows got out and came running down the driveway, and well, at
least they showed you where the weak spots were,
right? They showed
during the process.
Well, and that's what Levi was like, at least you didn't wake up in the morning and they were gone. I was like, that's so true. But and there's like this whole thing of like, most people are like, you got to separate the cow that you're milking from the rest of the herd. And I can see that in a large herd, it wouldn't make sense to bring 20 cows to the barnyard, but we have 4 now. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to bring them all every time, because then everybody is happier, So it's like that context is very specific to us. And yeah, I don't know. There's still a lot of learning going on, but I don't know.
Major progress. We're getting about half a gallon a day. Right. Which for us is exactly what our family drinks. So if we can maintain that, that would be lovely.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty exciting. So we just wanted to share that with you guys. If you need help milking, find somebody that has experience milking. It's not us.
It's not us.
We can point you in the direction of some people.
We can, yeah. We can, for sure.
And share this episode with somebody that might benefit,
They're like, if they're listening, they're like, no, don't send them to me. No, maybe they'd be willing. I don't
know. Somebody might need a little bit of encouragement. And I hope that that's what this episode does.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for listening, and tag us on social media.